And welcome everybody back to the Fandom Zone. It is I guess, most news breaking villain across the YouTube verse, General Zod. Today I am here with Big Lee, and we're doing part two of an interview that was started. So to give you guys a little bit of context before we kick this off, I had a part one you can go check out. It was the WWE exposed. We talked about the story itself and the things that were happening, the really horrible, awful things that were happening within the WWE, just besides the steroids that nobody else knew about. I said this story was personal to both me and the man sitting next to me, Big Lee, my father, because we were both directly involved in everything that happened with this cover up. And there's a lot of things that go with this. There's bribery. There is some instances of murders being covered up, all sorts of crazy stuff. And journalists broke this to my father, and they've been working together. And we've kind of been sitting on this part of it, this part of the story to let you know who's breaking this. But today, due to the fact that the company is sitting on this story and refuses to bring it out there, I'm going to break it here on the channel first. Before we get started, I want to give a couple of shout outs. Shout out to Black Angus, who promoted this. Thank you, buddy. He was the first one who ever interviewed me. So thanks. I appreciate it. A shout out to Odin from Geeks and Gamers. I was talking to him, and he is also very interested in this. So hopefully he's sharing this stream too. And everybody else who's in Twitter promoting me, thank you. And if you're new, like, subscribe, share to everybody. Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all of that stuff. Get it as many platforms as you can. This is a very serious discussion I'm going to have. I'm going to involve some very serious things that we're going to talk about today, and just showing how a big corporate conglomerate can cover these things up. We have some pictures we're going to show you, some documents. So this is some tangible, real evidence. This isn't something we're just pulling out of the sky. This is like a real deal, legitimate cover up from the top of the WWE, being Vince McMahon, all the way down to everybody who works in that company, and including some media outlets that have been paid or told not to bring this stuff out. We're going to expose it all here today for you guys, specific names and all of those people that are involved with this. So it should be a fun show, and I should rattle a lot of cages. So who knows how long this stream will be up. So promote me now.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, before we get started on the whole rant, I want you to give people context to your involvement in this, and kind of give us the beginning of where this all started and how you got directly involved with the lawsuit that happened years ago, and why is it coming up again now? Why does the major company that's going to be bringing this expose out, why are they bringing it out now?
Okay, well, pretty much I've been working on a story with a gentleman that right now we're going to break his name. Nobody knows his name. And the reason I'm breaking his name is because I've worked with him on this story since 2017 on the WWE. And we've continuously worked. Originally, when we first started this story, it was going to be on Deadspin. And as a lot of people know about Deadspin wound up going out of business because of a lot of bad business moves and stuff. But this gentleman, he was a freelance writer. And so he had a story lined up with Deadspin, and then Deadspin had issues. So they kind of went out of business. And it's a shame because they were very popular at the time. And just because of being misrun, they had a good amount of viewers and stuff, and people reading their stuff, and they had good reporting, but they just didn't organize and do it correctly from behind the scenes. So we had this writer. His name is David Bixenspan. That's Bixenspan. You can reach him on. He has his own Twitter account. He also did a story on Jimmy Snuka a few years back, who murdered his girlfriend and eventually got it was covered up. Vince McMahon helped go in and shut the story down of the murder, and this was back in several years ago. Snuka wound up going on trial for it, but at the time when Snuka went on trial, he was suffering from dementia. So eventually, the trial, because he was in such bad shape, got thrown out. But even though they knew that he murdered his girlfriend, and David Bixenspan did a story on it, which was a very popular story in the wrestling community, and it basically broke down everything. Him and Dave Meltzer was also another person in the wrestling world that worked on this story. Now, all these people.
Hold on just 1 second, because I want to highlight something about when you say the cover up about murders, right? Because if you remember, a couple of years later, there would be another man who would murder his family. Of course, once again, steroids and all the crap that they're putting into their body related, and that man would be Chris Benoit. And that was so big, it couldn't be covered up at that time. I remembered it went crazy viral because at that time, information age has really kicked off. So Chris Benoit essentially did the same thing, it sounds like, as Jimmy Snuka did, only back then they could cover it up a lot better than they could when Benoit did it. Am I correct?
Yeah, so well, there was no cover up on the Benoit one. The Benoit one was an awful story where he suffered a lot. You got to remember, these wrestlers are always in intense pain. They're all drugged up because they do 200-300 shows. You see them on a couple shows, but people don't realize that these guys, for sometimes 200 shows a year, are throwing their bodies all over the ring, and most of them cannot work without being on steroids. Once they get the injuries, they go on steroids. And besides the steroids, a lot of them take amphetamine, speed, cocaine, and so many of them over the last 20, 30 years have died. Most famous wrestlers, you can put their names in there and they've passed away. Whether it's the Von Erich brothers, or you can just go on and on. I mean, it doesn't stop. Death at a young age is no big thing. Elizabeth, who was with Randy Macho Man, she died of a drug overdose. And I met her during the lawsuit. But that's just one of the many parts. You can go on YouTube and find so many stories on the deaths and the murders and the strange things that have happened in wrestling. But what we're here to talk about is in 1992, my brother came to me and told me that at that time I knew that he was working for the WWF. That's what they were called at that time. And he all of a sudden was not working. And I was in the Utica area. And I said to him, Tom, why aren't you working for the WWE no more? And then he sat me down and told me why. He basically was sexually being hit on from the time of 14 all the way until he was in his early 20s. Originally, it was by Mel Phillips. And Mel Phillips basically would go around the country and he would look for boys from broken families. And then he would take these boys from broken families. And if he liked them, the way they looked and everything, he would bring them to the shows and make them into ring boys, bring them across lines, breaking all sorts of laws, bringing them across state lines, paying them out of pocket to set up the rings. And Mel Phillips basically just wanted to be around young boys. And a few of these young boys would survive and go to the next phase where they were groomed for Terry Garvin. And Terry Garvin was basically, he went, one night my brother went over to his house and he basically said to my brother that he wanted him to sleep with him. His wife was away at that time and it was a big snowstorm outside. And my brother told him no. He says, I'm not like that. I'm not going to do it. So my brother had no way home. So during the snowstorm, he had to go outside and sleep in the van. The following morning, he finally got back to the warehouse, the WWF warehouse, and there, Mel Phillips informed him and said to him, "I got to let you go because you didn't sleep with Terry, and that's how it goes around here. You know how it goes, Tom. This is how, if you want to advance, you got to go through Terry." And Pat Patterson was involved in the lawsuit too. And Pat Patterson was also an admitted homosexual, but he also was a sexual abuser, not not so much physically, but he was known to grab crotches, but he would stare at the guys and say dirty things to them continuously. The wrestlers were always working under intense sexual pressure from Pat Patterson and Terry Garvin. And so
So
what happened? I'm sorry.
So, just so I got this straight, so that everybody else who's watching this or will watch this has a good handle on it. Just from that little bit you told me, I heard they broke several laws. You have the first the hiring of minors
They
because
didn't hire
minors
them.
can't work.
They didn't hire them. They brought them on the road, and they just
Well,
let them. They ran around basically, setting up the rings. It was all done off to the side.
yeah, it's under the table money, right? So they're
Right.
paying these people under the table, which is a huge legal thing within itself. And now you have these people who are at the top, right? Decision making, and they are using sexual favors or coercing people into sexual favors for job advancement.
Yes,
That's
it's pretty
basically the
much.
gist of it,
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty much like Epstein. You remember Epstein? What he would do is he would bring the girls to his house, and with Epstein, what he would have the girls go out into the high schools and look for other girls, and then bring them back to Epstein's place, and then Epstein would hit on them and do sexual things to them. It was exactly the same thing with the WWE because what would happen is Mel Phillips had a couple guys, that young boys that were 14, 15, 16, that the wrestlers used to kid around and call them Mrs. Phillips. And they would go out and look for the boys to bring home. I mean, sorry, not to bring to Mel Phillips. And Mel Phillips, would decide which one. Like I said, he would decide which ones he liked the really good looking kids and certain types. And if anybody goes online and see videos of my brother Tom, he was a very handsome kid and he fit their criteria. But Tom was always fighting sexual advances. And the reason that he stood around is because he loved wrestling. He wanted to be part of wrestling. And they knew that. These kids loved wrestling. And anybody that watches this show, what they'll understand is with wrestling, they use that to their advantage, knowing that these kids loved wrestling so much. It was a fantasy world. It was fake. And basically, a lot of these kids thought it was real and they became part of this fantasy. And that's where so basically what happened at this point, my brother came to me. And so when he told me, I knew that Phil Munchnick, hello, Lee, I know that Phil Munchnick was doing part of a story and was making some discussions on what was going on with the show. I'm sorry, with the WWE. And so what happened was I contacted Phil Munchnick and I told him who I was. And I told him that I thought it was crummy that my brother lost his job because of this. And so he asked me if we had a lawyer. I told him no. And he said, well, maybe before you talk to me, you should get a lawyer. This way, everything's up and up. So what I did is I went out and got a lawyer, a local lawyer from the area. And he actually took, as soon as we talked to him, he took the lawsuit and he started doing interviews and calling all sorts of people in, from Bruno Sammartino, Billy Graham, he did depositions, and other kids that were also involved. Example, Chris Lose was one of the kids with his name. He was from the Buffalo area, Niagara Falls, that area up there. And he was one of the many kids. I met several kids and talked to them and interviewed them. And then at that point, we got a call from the Geraldo Rivera show once they heard about the lawsuit. And my lawyer told us not to talk to anybody. But at that time, we were young. We didn't know any better. And so the woman, her name was Brooke Skalski, that called from the Geraldo Rivera show, told me that if I didn't let her do an interview, that she would park a van on the front lawn and sit there and wait until we do give her an interview, basically forcing us to give an interview. So she came up from New York City. We gave an interview. She liked the interview and she decided to bring us down to New York City. And when we went down there, we did an interview with Greg Rivera, who was Geraldo Rivera's brother. And it was at that time, the WWE was catching wind of somebody and their brother that was creating a lawsuit against them. And I guess at that time, Jerry McDivitt, who was the lawyer for the WWE, started doing some research, and they hired Fairfax, which was a private investigating service from New York City. And they basically found out that it was Tom. And at that point, the pressure was on because when we went down there, Geraldo Rivera's Brooke Skalski told us, look, I can get you a big time city lawyer. My boyfriend's father knows somebody. So basically, we got hooked up with the father. But the father could not take the case because he was involved with the WWE's company, the son was. And so they found us another lawyer who turned out to be a horrible lawyer. And this lawyer, Alan F., I'll call him, and the F is a good word for his last name, basically did the negotiation, and he was a rookie. He really couldn't even hang with Jerry McDivitt. And so at that point, we set up a meeting on a Sunday morning when nobody was in New York City. And Vince McMahon snuck into New York City with his wife to meet with our lawyer and do a negotiation. And you have any questions before I move on, Lee, on this?
Yes, my biggest thing, and I'm sure other people who come on and view the channel and things like that, there's always going to be that one question. Do you have proof of these meetings, times, dates, documents, things like that, that substantiate these claims? Because
Yes.
you know
Yeah.
as well as everyone, anyone can make conspiracy claims and theories. I'm sure the WWE gets tons of them about them doing this, them doing that. They all say, oh, it's just some nut job who's coming out, saying stuff. Where's the proof? So do you have
The proof
proof?
was Phil Muchnick, who was the reporter for the New York Post, broke the story on the back page, the full back page of the New York Post, and it said "Sex Lies" and the WWF. That was the name of the article, and Tom's name was in the article, and it talked about the whole entire lawsuit. Because at that time we were exclusively giving information to Phil Muchnick. And he was the one that was really involved because he always knew of the sleazy stuff that was going on with the WWE. And
So
he
just so I
knew,
get this straight, the Post, anyone can go back to when this article came out, the date, the time. They can look up this because nowadays everything's archived from the New York Post has an internet website where you could go back through and look at all the old articles. So someone could go online, look up the Post and find this article.
easier than that.
And
What they could do right now, they can go into YouTube and put Tom Cole, Lee Cole, and the WWF. What would pop up would be Larry King talking about the lawsuit, my brother on the Phil Donahue show. It would Geraldo Rivera's show would be on there. An exclusive interview with a news station during the second lawsuit would also be on there. So there's so much information right now that anybody could pull up and investigate. But this is just the tip of the iceberg because we're going to go further, and this is nothing compared to what we're going to talk to. talk about very shortly.
Nice. So, just so everyone's clear, because I like to lay this stuff out so that anyone who watches and gets to this mark, they know exactly where to look, where to go. You can literally put this stuff into YouTube. You could put Tom, you could put Lee, and you can actually see
Cole. You got to
Lee
put Cole.
Cole, Lee Cole or Tom Cole into YouTube, and you will find these interviews. And this isn't a YouTube video, folks. This is a video of the actual interview from the actual show, a syndicated, real, a real news show. This isn't stuff that's just someone created a video. These are clips from the actual interview that really occurred. So it's not like we're just piecing things together. It's not like we just made something on YouTube. These are legitimately from this show itself
Yes.
that my father and my uncle were involved in. So this is not just something that we're wildly making some theories where we just came out and said, this is all stuff you guys are more than welcome to look into and check for yourself. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
Okay. So what happened at that point? And there's a lot we're jumping over because there's so much to talk about. So, but everything's out there for people to understand, and they can always ask questions and send us information anytime they want to ask us questions. So what happened at that point was we got a lawyer. His name was Alan F., like I said. And we were, they put us up above the Grand Central Station. I believe at that time it was the Hyatt Hotel. And we stayed there on Saturday night because we knew that Vince was coming in the following night. And I was supposed to go with Tom to meet with Vince McMahon and all the lawyers. But what happened that night was that they contacted me and told me to stay out of the meeting. And they wanted me to stay out of the meeting basically because of the fact that I was, at that time, I had a record. And they didn't want them to use that against me. And it wasn't
Oh,
nothing.
it still sounds kind of fishy though that all of a sudden now they'd be bringing up
Yeah,
your
and
record when during this important.
Lee, your picture's not showing right now.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know. I took it off. I'm switching locations.
Okay.
I
Okay.
need to be sitting down for this because it's a lot to take in.
Okay. Okay. So what we did at that point is I said, okay, I trusted the lawyer and decided to stay at the hotel room. And Tom went with the lawyers and they met Vince McMahon. And the first thing they did is a couple times the lawyer left the room and left Tom in the room alone with Vince McMahon, which was ridiculous. And eventually Tom told Vince said to Tom, so what is it you want? Tom said, I want to come back to work and I want my back pay. So they gave him his back pay. It came to close to $100,000. And they also hired him back. And at that point, that's when Tom told them that I was involved. So they knew that they had to get me in tow. And the following day, they were going to do a show with Phil Donahue. And so we were going to meet at NBC and do the show. And what we did is I went over to NBC, and there Vince came, and he was with Elizabeth at that time, who was a big star, Randy Macho Man's wife, and Linda McMahon. And we went inside, and we were going to basically, Vince decided he was going to ambush the people that were on the show against him and say, well, look, Tom's right here sitting in the audience. But somehow they got wind of that. And so they decided not to even mention Tom's name. So Vince couldn't use Tom against them. So Tom stayed in the audience with Linda McMahon and basically watched the show. And from that point on, Tom came back to me and he said to me, you know, Lee, I decided I want my job back. I settled. And the lawyer that was with him looked at me and said, your brother made a big mistake. He said, you know, we could have, you know, we had hundreds of shows that wanted us and over the next couple of days. And we could have easily have done those shows the following day because Vince McMahon said, we told my brother and the lawyer, well, look, if you guys want a lot of money, I'm going to fight you. And you back me in a corner, I'm going to come at you like a rat. And so it seemed like Vince intimidated Tom's lawyer. And there was a setup going on because we eventually found out that Tom's lawyer was talking to Jerry McDivitt well before we met there, and it was home to home. And they were talking, and without even letting our lawyer was making negotiations without even talking to us before any of this went down, which
So he
is a
did.
week.
Yeah, so he did the typical thing, like you see that a lot on murder trials and stuff like that. You know, because you watch all that stuff. I don't, but occasionally I'll catch the interesting case. But I noticed that you do have the point where the lawyers will convene with each other and they'll come up with different types of deals. But normally the clients are supposed to be privy to that information, and it sounds like to me that the lawyer just was trying to cut a side deal because he didn't think this thing was winnable, or maybe they offered him something. We probably won't ever know what was
It
actually
was winnable.
involved.
Any lawyer knew it was winnable. But what happened is he wound up getting some side work from the WWE. He put an injunction on the Geraldo Rivera show that we shot so the show couldn't show. And Geraldo Rivera came on and he was pissed. He says, I had an interview with Tom. He was supposed to be on the show. I got an injunction and I was threatened that they would sue me so I cannot show Tom's face. So basically, Geraldo showed Tom with his face covered up because of the injunction. But Geraldo was really pissed. And if you go on YouTube and see that show with Geraldo when he was really pissed that he could not speak to Tom because he had a big story. He was the first major person that was going to break this story. And at that time, Geraldo in 1992 was just starting to peak and at the top of his game. He had his own show with NBC. So that was a big thing.
And so just so we know, just so we get a little bit of perspective here, this is from 92. So this has been carrying and in a sense, it's been covered up since the 90s.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many things that have gone on. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, what happened is always over the years, they always had a fear of Tom for one certain reason. Tom told the truth and he had a legitimate case. And he came off well when he did interviews and he spoke to people, and he doesn't come off like a liar. Then they used my record against me because, I was, when you were a young boy, I was in trouble with the law sometimes. And what they did is when you were, right after they did the settlement, they decided they had to get me out of the way. So what they basically did is when Lee here was over visiting me when he was a child, and because I was just divorced from his mother, they basically, the WWF had my best friend and my brother basically turned me in on some warrants, but they didn't realize that I already settled the restitution to the case. But back then it wasn't in the, it's not like now where everything goes into the computer system right away. So my warrant was still out there. And so what they did is that night I had to take my son Lee to a motel because I seen a police car pull up and come knock at the door. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I decided I wasn't going to answer the door. And so I took Lee to a motel, called his mom, and the following morning his mom came and got him. And then I went back to my house, and a couple hours later, when I was in the kitchen, two detectives came to the door, and they said to me, well, we see that you got two pit bulls on the side of the house. They started talking to me about pit bulls. So I said, oh, cool, it's about the pit bulls. But as soon as they walked in the door, they said, oh, by the way, we also have a warrant for your arrest. So that's how they got in my house. And they arrested me, and they shipped me down to New York City. But they did not realize at that time that I paid my restitution on the case. The judge didn't even realize it. So when I got taken before the judge said to me, well, your probation officer's not here. I can't get a hold of him. I'm going to send you back to jail, and tomorrow you can come into court. If you have no evidence that this restitution is going to be paid, has been paid, I'm going to send you to state jail prison for 3 to 5 years. It was that simple. And the next day when I went back to court, uh, I was lucky and blessed that my probation officer was there, and he said yes, Lee did pay his money, and the judge dropped my case. That was it. After being a wanted felon for 3, 4 years and running like an idiot, they dropped my case. But when I got out of jail, I went to my brother Eddie's house, and when I got there, my brother Eddie said to me, "I got bad news for you, Lee. Your best friend Steve and Tom are the ones that turned you in at direction of the WWE. During a meeting, they decided that was the best way to get me out of the way." And so at that point, that morning, I was so upset. I went on Curtis Sliwa's show. He's the head of the Guardian Angels. He had a radio show, and I talked about it. And Jerry McDivitt sent a paper in the middle of the show that said to Curtis Sliwa, "You are to cease and desist this show right now." Curtis Sliwa basically told him to go to hell. I'm doing the show on the air. So Curtis Sliwa kept doing the show. And you have any questions from that point, Lee?
No, so far it's a pretty amazing kind of story. And it's a good thing that a lot of these interviews can be recovered because it's so,
Yes.
this is the kind of conspiracy and things that you hear. And even when it's come out that it's true, people are like, wow, that is so fantastic that if I didn't have these facts and evidence, I would have never in the world believed that something like this could be true. But then again, let's keep in mind that the WWE is a billion-dollar business, and we all know that billion-dollar businesses have skeletons in their closets. They all have things that they've done, legal or otherwise, that you would have never known even came out until someone blows the whistle or something happens or someone slips up somewhere. Then we hear about it. So I mean, it is quite interesting to know that a business like the WWE, and here's the irony: if you're watching them now, or if you've watched the show now, they've jumped on that train of being equal for women and things like that. But yet, there's this dark past of assault towards boys, like
Boys, women,
children
everybody.
abuse.
Everybody.
Even women, yeah, there's been women who have come out and said that there has been
They've had
stuff.
lawsuits.
There's been men wrestlers. I mean, this is across the board, really.
Many lawsuits, all sexual, many sexual lawsuits. And well, anyway, Tom went back to work for them. And so at that point, they knew that I was out there and I was doing interviews and stuff. And Tom and I stopped talking because of what happened. And I regret that because Tom was going through a lot at that time, and he was a young guy, and he just wanted to be in the world of wrestling. And that's basically all he cared about. I mean, they basically promised him a shot at becoming a ring announcer. But what they did to trick him when he went back is they made him sign. They said to him, "Well, we want to send you back to school." Now, Tom's a street kid, so Tom didn't even have a high school diploma. So what they said is, "We want to send you back to school." And then part of the contract said, if he drops out of school, they can fire him. So basically, they can get him legally out of the way. And of course, he went back to school. Of course, he stopped going because he was trying to take college classes, and he did not even have his high school diploma.
So yeah, that was never going to work. It's like a no.
And they knew
win.
it. They knew it. They wanted a legal way. And so what they did is they eventually fired him. And because of this, and there's a video online where we went there and we went outside of the building. My family did, and Linda McMahon came down and filmed my family. The news company came. Just put Tom. If you want to look at the video, just put Tom Cole WW.
Actually, it's. What we could do is we can actually share some of this stuff. I mean, probably not all the videos, but we could show a couple of things because we have the technology, we have the capability. But the one picture that I would like you to share so everyone knows, do you have the picture of that cute little kid being held. You guys have seen it in the thumbnail. If you're wondering why I say the cute little kid, that's me in that thumbnail, actually, being held in that picture. That is me next to Vince McMahon, a very young me.
Yeah, you're right on you're on the pic on this pic where you're right on the thing right now. You know,
Yes, and as vain as I am the larger part of the picture, mainly because I wanted to get more of Vince in there. But
yeah,
yeah, I am the child that you guys see in the middle at WrestleMania. At that time, I was just a young kid. I was a big wrestling fan. I didn't realize exactly what went down to get me to WrestleMania.
yeah.
Just that I
Well,
got a chance to meet the wrestlers. So you want to
and
tell them that story?
here's what happened. What happened is they I went with Tom right before they double crossed me to Titan Towers, and we met with Vince McMahon and his wife personally, and they took us out for dinner, and they were giving us the real good time. And you're going again, Lee. And
I know when I do that, that just means it's something I don't want people to see. So
okay. So what happened was I at that time was at the Titan Towers, and Vince McMahon drove me to the restaurant. It was just me and him in the car. And Vince McMahon looked at me and said, "You know, if I lose it all, I don't care because I've lost it before and I'll get it back." And Tom went with Linda McMahon in separate rides, and we went to the restaurant. And we got to the restaurant, it was magically empty, and it was just us in there at this real fancy restaurant. It was just me, Tom, Linda, and Vince. And during this time, they gave us the whole show. They took us back to the motel. All the wrestlers kept coming up to the table and introducing. And then they said to Tom he was coming back to work. So Tom stayed there. And when I met Vince, he kind of turned on me because in the middle of the conversation, he said to me that he wanted me to meet with Fairfax. At that time, I had a warrant out for my arrest. And so there was no way I was going to meet with a private investigation service. I told him no. And at this time, they didn't even know I had this warrant for my arrest. Only our lawyer did. And so, and back then, this is 1992, where you didn't have the technology. Now you can just, boom, go right online and find it. And so what happened was I told Vince that I wasn't going to meet with him, and Vince was getting mad. I could see the bulges in the side of his neck. And at that moment, I knew that the party was over between me and him. And I remember leaving the office, and I looked at my brother Tom, and I said, "That guy's so full of shit." And Tom laughed and said, "Yeah, he's an asshole, ain't he?" And so, we're street kids. We're young. We grew up in the streets. We basically could read people, and he was just a big show, a total fake. But he was damn good at it. And so at that point, I decided I wanted my money. So they gave me $20,000. Vince McMahon told one of his people to go in the safe and give me $10,000 petty cash. The following morning, they took me down to the bank and gave me another $10,000. So I had $20,000 on me. And then I went back to Utica. But when they gave me the money, they were under the assumption that I was going to move and disappear. And I told them, "Yeah, oh yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah, I left. Took my train and went back home. I didn't leave anywhere." And this is what really pissed them off because I was still around, and I was still talking to the people that were on the other side. And
so in a sense, they were trying to bribe you without coming out and saying that it's a bribe, but
exactly.
it's a strongly implied thing. And from what I
They
hear,
wanted me
this
to
is
leave.
the first.
They wanted me to leave without the money, and that they would work it out and get it to me. But I told them no. I said, "I ain't leaving. I want my money." At that point, I put a lot of time and effort into this. And yes, it was about money, unfortunately, because we were young, we were poor, we didn't have anything. And, that's a lot of money you're playing. It was all about the lawsuit in the beginning. Years later, it's not about the lawsuit no more. But back then, it was about the lawsuit. I'll be the first
And
person.
you're talking about not to see thousands for what they gave you is not even the equivalent to what this lawsuit would shake out as far as when it's all said and done. Now you're talking millions.
Yeah, it's
on the
a
table.
lot of money. And at that time, they just signed a deal with Hasbro, and a sexual abuse case with young boys would have destroyed them as a company.
Oh
Basically,
yeah, the toy
if Tom
lines, no one will touch that.
if Tom didn't settle that, if we had a competent lawyer, the lawyer would have said to Vince McMahon, "Okay, so tomorrow I'll see you on all the shows. We're going to be taking you to court. We're going to be suing you." And at that point, Vince McMahon would have caved because Vince McMahon did not want to lose a
Hey, you cut out. Okay, so we have a little bit of a technical difficulty. Let me see if I can get this back. But okay, so far, for everyone who is just joining us, we're talking about the lawsuit, and yeah, I'm gonna kind of just fill in the gaps here until we get everything situated. But Vince did not want to lose this lawsuit because of the fact that he had a lot of different deals going on with Hasbro, things like that, and a lawsuit that includes a sexual assault type of case that would have been devastating to the WWE. So yeah, there's a lot more going on. But anyways, for everyone who's watching and everything like that, shoot me some questions or anything that you might be intrigued in or something you want to know more about. For my end, let me tell you my story whilst I wait for my dad to return. At this time, I was young, uh, a huge WWE fan. And so one day my dad showed up and we had some tickets that were given to us. And also my mom was invited to come as well. So it was me, my mom, my dad, all along to see WrestleMania. It was the WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. God, there's been so many. I can't even remember the exact one. I want to say it's like eight or something like that. But, anyways, from my end of things, I never saw any of this. Okay. I was just a young kid. You could see me in the thumbnail. I had the Hulk Hogan bandana. I got autographs and things like that. But part of the deal, part of the negotiation that they had put was that we would be allowed to see a WrestleMania show live. And I've got the scrapbooks and the VIP pass, but I mean, I met all of the wrestlers behind stage. I got to see Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper. My mom met Undertaker. I got a picture with Paul Bearer. I mean, all of the big stars of this time, I got a chance to go and meet. We stayed at a really nice hotel. There is, yeah, I know, Timon. I should definitely be careful. But there's a lot of awesome things that I got to experience. And here's the thing, when this stuff happens, I vaguely remember, especially my dad being taken away. I had to go and see my mom. But these are things you don't think about when you're that young. When you're a kid and you see something like this, your mind wanders to other different things. And it's kind of crazy that while I was thinking one thing, what was really going on behind the scenes is something totally and completely different and shady. And it was just really amazing that all these years, it was only until a couple of, it was when I got older, I'd say about my 20s or so, when I actually started finding out what had happened, the implications. Okay. And I want to talk about the sexual abuse end of this. We are talking about young boys. Okay. We're talking about uh, kids, teenagers who were being brought into this organization, who were being brought into this company under false pretenses. And I talked to a couple of people on Twitter and stuff to kind of get this out there. And they're like, we haven't heard this story. And I said, exactly. This is exactly the point. This is the kind of story that's been buried for years. But if you look hard enough, you can see people that have tried. They have tried to mention this, and it gets buried in history and in time. And why is this relevant now? Because Linda McMahon is part of Trump's cabinet. Okay, she can't be on in an official capacity because of all this stuff that has happened. But she is in an advisory capacity, and you're talking about these people who are rubbing elbows with the most powerful people in the land, right? And years ago, even before they got to the status that they're at now, right now, currently, before billions, when they were just in the millions, they were covering up horrendous things. They were letting young boys be abused. They knew about it. Linda, Vince, all of them. They knew about it, and it was treated like a don't ask, don't tell kind of a thing, right? Vince knew, but he didn't want to know the specifics. Okay. Linda knew by extension of being with Vince, but she didn't want to know the specifics. And now all of this stuff is coming out here.
Okay,
So,
you got me back?
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to get on. Something happened with my computer in the middle of all this. It figures. Okay. Okay,
Maybe
so
they shut it down.
so where are we at right now, Lee?
I was just kind of giving them a context to what's going on. I'm gonna mute you for a second because there's an echo. All right. I just have you backstage just so they could see me. I was giving them context about what was going on and things like that, and I was telling them my end about going to WrestleMania and how I didn't know much about what was going on and how I saw things a little bit differently than your guys' perspective.
Yes. And we should be okay. I'm just trying to get on through my computer, okay?
All right.
Okay, let me try that real quick. Sorry about this, but this is part of technology, unfortunately. Okay, take me. I'm going to sign out right here for a minute. I'll be back.
Okay, so while we get the technical,
I'm back.
Different. My perspective is cool. Hey, good to have you back, and good for me not to hear the echo, because if I can hear it, I know everyone else can.
Maybe Vince has somebody running around the backyard to just try to skip my cable. But anyway, okay. So
Who
yeah.
knows?
So when I was out when I was there at Titan Towers, Linda McMahon asked me if I wanted to go to WrestleMania, and she sent us tickets to the house, and she sent us 4 tickets, and it was that, and we went. It was me, you, Steve Bradley, who's the one that eventually sold me out and snitched and got me arrested. He went to the show, and we had the backstage passes, and that's why we got all these pictures from, and lots of other things. And this was back in 1992. And at that point, that was right before everything went to hell. But anyway, I don't want to go over that too much. I want to get into what's going on now with the new information coming out that nobody knows. And I'm going to pretty much drop that information whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, and I'm probably going to have to go through and timestamp this. God, I hate timestamps. So this was just catching everyone up. I want everyone to know the severity of the things coming out, the stuff that's going down, and everything that we got. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, if you're watching this all happened in the 90s, right? Why is it relevant now? Why should I care? Well, Business Insider, who I put in my thing, is writing an article, and they were working with the journalist that you were talking about in the beginning of this program to break a huge story. So tell us about this story that apparently Business Insider is sitting on, because I was supposed to make this months ago. Tell us why we haven't been on the air.
Well, like I said, in 2017, David Bixpan, he's an independent writer, and I already talked about some of the stuff he's done. And if you put David Bixenspan right into Google, he'll pop up everywhere as a reporter, because that's what he is He's an independent reporter and a very good one, but he's really in tune with the wrestling world. And he is starting a new, a matter of fact, he is starting a new YouTube page, not a YouTube page, basically, I can't think what you call it, but he's starting a new show called The Dark Side, and it's going to do basically talk about wrestling and the dark things in wrestling. But what David Bixenspan did, and the reason I'm coming out because I'm a little bit frustrated, because in 2017 we started this story. Then at that time, Deadspin was supposed to come out and talk about the story. They shut down. And then he's been sitting on this story, shopping everywhere. The Washington Post got a hold of me, and we were going to do a story. They stopped the story. And then there was a small story that came out in a couple other papers, and but nothing big until this one. And the reason this story is going to be big is because what David Bixenspan did is he went and met with Phil Munchnick, who had the biggest trove of everything has to do with this story. Phil Munchnick handed all his stuff over to Dave and let Dave take over the story. So all this information he had on all the lawsuits, everything going on. Matter of fact, Phil Munchnick, when he was reporting on the story, was sued and an injunction, and he was shut down, and he couldn't talk about the WWE or F anymore because of the injunction. So what happened, David Bixenspan went and met with Phil, and Phil gave him boxes and boxes of information that nobody else has. Nobody, just Phil. And because Dave is basically a real investigative reporter. And so what he did is over the years, he's been writing this story, kept getting rejected. People would bring him in and they would start looking at the story, then reject him for some reason. And I used to always tell Dave, I said, Dave, the problem is these people are calling up Vince McMahon or the WWE, and they're saying to them, will you please give us your opinion on what this story is about and what do you want to say about it? At that point, Jerry McDivitt, who's like one of the best lawyers in the world, will get going on this and shut it down somehow. We had a story with NBC at one time. Years ago, we had a story with NBC and David Brokaw, who was as big as it gets. And it turned out that Vince McMahon was best friends with Ebersol, who ran the sports department at NBC. And they shut the story down. And it was on and on, so many stories like this that got shut down. The Huffington Post did a story. And they're the ones that had the Washington Post contact me. And I remember the Washington Post saying, oh, the guy that runs this is the one that is the same guy that investigated the movie Spotlight about the priests and the churches and stuff. So the guy that runs the Washington Post now was involved with that whole story. So they were bragging to me what a great guy he is, and they'll never back off this story. And guess what? They backed off the story. And so at that point, what they did is they decided that they didn't want to do the story. And then when I started talking to Dave, he went in gung ho. And now when I try to contact him, he's kind of avoiding me and giving me one word answers, never giving me direct answers. So I'm trying to figure out what is his game? Is he really going to break a story? Is Business Insider, which claims have anywhere between 80 million and 300 million people that actually tune into them and read their stuff. And I'm so wide on those figures because they're debating. It was said that it was 80 million, but they're debating it's 300 million because of all their outlets and all the social media that they have. They're claiming that they have 300 million followers, which is a lot. But hey, nowadays we know that. And so this story is supposed to break. It was supposed to break a couple weeks ago. And here we are. It still hasn't broken. And it's a huge story. This story has, I think he told me it was 50,000 words or something like this. So he was expecting this to be out by now. And so So I don't know what to believe with him. I don't know what to believe with anything. So I'm talking about it, and I'm saying that this story is supposed to come out right now, and it's not out. And he has all the information. He has so much information. He talks about he has all the information on my friend Steve, who signed a letter, a confession, basically saying what talked about his meeting with the WWE and the lawyers there with Tom, and how they decided that they wanted to have me arrested and get me out of the way. And what happened is this David Bixenspan found the letter that Steve originally wrote to me as a confession about what he was meant to do. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. Okay.
No, that's okay. So
Okay.
basically, what you're saying is, though, so this story that's supposed to come out, is this on all the stuff that we just talked about, or is there
Much
new
more.
things
Much
in
more.
this?
Much more. That's what we're talking about right now. Okay, so it's much more. Basically, what he did is he did the Freedom of Information Act and got all the information from the FBI, who had the steroid trial. The FBI had questioned Tom on several occasions on everything that happened, because Tom also went before the grand jury. And through the Freedom of Information Act, he has all this stuff in the story. And on top of that, he has all the stuff going on with Steve and the setup of me. He has spoken, and now everybody said, why did Tom defend these people? Because Tom just wanted to stay out of it. And back when Linda McMahon started running for the Senate, she ran for the Senate twice in Connecticut. At that time,
so hold on a second, just so I have this clear, because this is startling, and it probably shouldn't be anyone new to anyone who follows politics. But with all of this baggage that is following the McMahon name, based on what we know now, and there's still stuff out there, so there is tangible evidence out there of at least the steroids and the other stuff. She has ran for a seat of power
twice
in our government.
And right now, she was also on Donald Trump's cabinet, and she ran the Small Business Administration department. And now she's running a PAC for Donald Trump.
Whoa. So this lady who knew about all this stuff going on, because by extension, if she's with Vince, obviously she knows what's going on.
She was the one that was in charge of the cover-up. Vince stepped back and told her to handle it. When Tom got fired, he went to collect unemployment insurance. And what Linda McMahon did, she's never did before. And this is also in this story coming out by David Bixenspan to Business Insider. It talks about how Linda McMahon showed up at the hearings for unemployment. She literally showed up. This is a billionaire. To stop Tom from getting unemployment. Tom won the case.
So Linda McMahon showed up to an unemployment case to roadblock someone from receiving that as a way to punish them for even bringing this up, right? So she is stopping someone's livelihood. And then now skip years later, this woman is not only part of the government, but she's doing a pact as well.
She's not on the board. She's not on. She stepped down from her administration board. But here's another weird thing. She was she ran against Richard Blumenthal, who was another guy who claimed that he was a war hero and stuff. And it turned out he was a freaking liar about everything. But he won the election because, one, he was in Democratic Connecticut, and Linda had a lot of baggage. And at that time, Tom went forward and supported her. And that came out, and a lot of people in the wrestling world started attacking Tom, why he was supporting her. And the reason Tom was supporting her at that time, because he thought they really cleaned up their act and were trying to do better things. But then what happened is the only time they would contact Tom is when they knew a story was going to come out. And Tom has emails of Linda McMahon and Jerry McDevitt contacting him This is also in the story. These
Wow.
emails where Linda McMahon and Jerry McDivitt are contacting Tom and warning Tom about a story that's coming out. Basically, they would get a hold of Tom just to make sure that Tom understood that a story was coming out, and they just wanted to make sure that Tom was on their side.
So
And
my uncle was being contacted by the WWE, and keep in mind, people, this is the 2020s now. We have emails and things like that. You can't erase this stuff. Anyone who's been on the internet knows. Even if you think you scrub information from the web, there's always pieces and breadcrumbs that you can follow to the source. But anyways, they contacted my uncle every time, and it's not to say, hey, how are you doing with the way we messed up your life and someone in our company made sexual sexual remarks to you and stuff. How are things going? No, they did it specifically to use him as a tool to railroad these interviews or any potential
yes,
attacks
and
against the
here's
company.
another thing you got to remember, and this is one of the most important things you got to remember. They fired Mel Phillips, Terry Garvin, and Pat Patterson during the lawsuit. Garvin and never came back to work. He eventually passed away. And Mel Phillips never came back to work. He just recently passed away. And the only reason Pat Patterson came back is because my brother signed a letter stating that he could come back. So,
And just so you guys know, Pat Patterson is in several things you watch. I
he
was
just
thinking
retired.
about this the other.
Pat Patterson ran everything. He was the man. Pat Patterson was the man. He was more powerful than Vince McMahon. He ran everything. Without him, Vince McMahon was a little lost boy walking down an aisle without his papa, whatever. I mean, this guy basically ran his empire for him. He set up all the shows. He did everything for him.
Yeah,
So
if
he
you
needed
guys
him.
watch Tough Enough, there's even, and this got me thinking when because this was after we did our interview. I went on the WWE Network. I was watching Tough Enough. They have an episode with Pat Patterson in it where he talks about what he does for the WWE, and I found it kind of funny and ironic because I'm like, you guys don't even know the half of the man that you're talking to
And
right
he
now.
came forward and admitted that he was a homosexual. He came out of the closet, and it was a pretty emotional show. But here's the thing: that's all fine and well. Okay, he's a homosexual. You know, a lot of Americans or around the world are homosexuals. All fine and good. But what he did, he doesn't talk about. Yes, I was a homosexual that harassed people that I had the power to advance in this company.
Yeah, we're
And
talking about someone who is not just like, going out and, meeting whoever because that's his thing. We're talking about he is using a position of power and outright threatening people to cover up his actions. That is so, that's like that's like you hear about guys harassing women, right? Guys of power saying that they will advance a female if she does X, Y, and Z. We've seen several stories on it. But here's the thing you don't hear, that guys can be harassed too. And that this man was harassing males within the company and then using and hiding behind his power so that he never got found out. This is a man who got fired and was allowed to come back after being fired for very serious allegations.
yes, you
That's
know,
mind-boggling.
yeah, and so when he came back, and then they set Tom up and they fired him, but everything worked out and they got Tom where they wanted him. And here's where they messed up. Tom has a lot of emotional issues from what happened to him through the WWF thing, and so uh, he wanted to seek therapy. And so he went and a couple of years back, he called up Jerry McDivitt. He said to Jerry, or emailed him, he said to Jerry, I think you guys, being you did this to me with, this all happened because of my emotional issues are because of you guys. And I think that you should cover my counseling cost. And so Jerry just came out and said, no way, we're not covering that. And at that moment, Tom realized that they weren't who they were pretending who they were to him. They should have helped him because they know what they'd done to him, how much of they emotionally affected him. And
See, and here, let me just highlight this for a second so you guys got a perspective. He's not asking for money years later. We've heard this with the Epstein and everyone coming out and claiming this, and you don't know which claims are true or not or who wants money. He's not asking for money to be hushed or, to get over it. He just wanted his therapy paid for so that he can advance himself and move past this, right? It seems like a reasonable thing to do. It seems like the less costly of the two options that they had ahead of them, and they couldn't be decent human beings and even do that. That's the way I'm perceiving it.
And this is also in the story by Bixenspan coming out.
Wow.
So all this information is in the story coming out. So this is a powerful story. And here I am, I'm saying, is Business Insider going to be like the other places and not have the balls to do the story, which is right? I mean, nowadays they're burying people that are innocent over lies.
Yeah. I mean, look at, and I'm sorry to jump in, but this kind of goes to what I've been seeing on my end of things. Because if you guys don't know, I cover the entertainment Hollywood world side of things. This is normally out of my wheelhouse, but this connects, and I'll tell you why. Because the media, as we know it right now, has been canceling people who do minor stupid things, right? We had the thing with Kevin Hart and all of this stuff that comes out, right? They go out and they vehemently attack and they hide behind this. We're being equality and inclusive and all this stuff, right? But a story that has to do with someone who's related to me, who went through sexual abuse and trauma and has not been the same since this has happened, the media outlets don't want to cover this. They don't want to do what's right because Vince McMahon's in that world. And this is a powerful person. And all of these media people fear. They're afraid of the power that these people wield. And here's the irony. It's 2020. You go after someone now, you can get traction. Someone on Twitter and YouTube can destroy someone. Someone in a basement who knows nothing about nothing can ruin someone's life over a couple of words. And we can't get people who are in the public eye to step up and do the right thing. That's basically what I'm hearing.
That I'm having with this story with David Bixenspan is that I keep telling him, I keep saying to him, the problem here, David, is when they find out about these stories, they jump on them. So I'm at this point thinking to myself, who in the WWE got a hold of someone at Business Insider to attempt to shut this story down? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the story's going to come out. It sounds like they have it on their desk. They have it on their desk. They got lawyers going over it. They got lawyers going over it right now. They're trying to look at all the legal aspects of the story. This guy busted. They even paid this guy already half his money for the story.
I mean, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. It sounds like to me that if something was to happen, they have the story. So if they kill this thing, it's right back to the start, right? Trying to shop this thing around, find it. And the reason why we're here live right now is because I've been holding back. I have not wanted to do this part of my interview until we've had the okay from the journalist who's been providing my dad with this information, who you've been working closely with to break this story as far as family involvement.
I went on the Hannibal show. That's online too. The Hannibal show I went on, and he's very popular. He has over 200,000 viewers. And I went on his show, and I had 7,000 people watch when I was on. And we talked about this show, and I never mentioned the story that was coming out. I never mentioned who was coming out with the story. I never mentioned the reporter because I gave him my word I wasn't going to do it. But when I start writing to this reporter and texting him, and he loved me for a long time. He would text me and answer me, and we would have conversations all the time. But lately, he's been giving me half-ass answers, and I get the feeling that he's blowing me off here. Okay, he's
And
collected half his money, but what he's done is I even delivered him my Tom to talk to, which was impossible. Nobody can talk to Tom, because I tried to work with him. I've done everything, and instead of him being appreciative about it, he's acting like he's doing me a favor, and it's not him doing me a favor. It's like you pushed to get your damn story done. And if Business Insider's not going to do your story, open up a website, put the damn story on a website, go online,
and
go
just
on
so you
Zoom,
guys know,
go
I'm
on
gonna just
Zoom,
highlight. I'm just
go
gonna
on
highlight
Zoom.
this. I'm gonna highlight this, and I'm gonna throw these guys right underneath this bus. Business Insider. Everybody who follows me, everybody who watches this, go look them up. They're a real thing. They are real big. I looked them up before this show.
They're
They have
huge.
a lot of subsidiaries to other news outlets. Business Insider was supposed to have this done. Business Insider, just in case one of you guys want to watch me too, because I love the controversy, but Business Insider has been sitting on this for how long now? When did we
They've
put
had the
Shelf
story a
on
couple
this
months.
interview?
They're using Kova as an excuse now. They're using Kova as an excuse. They've got
That's
other
bull
things.
crap.
Yeah.
We're online right now. They could easily do a stream. They could do what Jimmy Kimmel can get on. Then I refuse to believe that nobody else can get on the internet. If you really
No,
want
we're
to,
talking
they
about
can
no,
easily.
we're talking about them writing the story in the article because
They can type it from home. You're telling me that they can't type on a
no.
laptop
Well,
at
here's
their
the
home
excuse.
desktop?
Last month when I said what's going on with the story, I was told, oh, the guy that has to pass the story is what he's doing right now. He's on vacation, and so that's why the story. And at that point, I said to Dave, Dave, this doesn't pass the smell test right now. So I don't know what's going on, but I was getting really frustrated at that point. And so he
And I don't
basically,
want to put on the tinfoil hat, but I'm just going to throw this out here. To me, and just from the evidence that you're presenting here, it sounds like an unwillingness to go through with this story that
they're
someone
scared.
contacted someone.
They're scared.
Yeah, they sound
That's
scared.
the problem with the media. They like to do they spend too much time going after Donald Trump instead of going, okay, go after Donald Trump if you want. But you're talking about young boys that had their lives destroyed. You're talking about people that Vince McMahon and Linda McMahon ran. Back then, they were worth $100 million, let's say. It was a smaller company. They didn't grow to that level yet back in the 80s and stuff. And so they were at the shows all the time. And they say, well, we didn't really realize that these young boys are running around. So you're at the show. You run it. You're the boss. And you don't see an African-American man running around with a bunch of little white kids.
I mean, that just sounds fishy to me.
How do you not spot that?
I mean, this is so crazy that these people are people that the media should be jumping at the chance to go after. And the fact that Linda is connected or was connected to Trump's cabinet, they should be diving all over this. But something every time stops them from going after the truth. And folks, here's the thing. We are talking about lives. This is personal for me because we're talking about a family member within my family who has been affected by what has happened years ago. And it really pisses me off and gets under my skin because this is a prime example of people not wanting to go after the actual corrupt and disgusting power that we have in charge, but they'd rather go after somebody else and cover another story that's ridiculous nonsense.
They want to go after Kevin Spacey. He turned out to be innocent. His career is destroyed. They want to go after people like that, and instead of going after people like this. Let me give you an example. When Linda McMahon was running for the Senate, she lost twice to Richard Blumenthal. Now, Richard Blumenthal, I'm sure a few people have seen him. He looks like Lurch. He's a scary looking dude. And so when she went to get confirmed for the cabinet, Donald Trump's cabinet, everybody was having trouble getting confirmed. They were getting confirmed by 1 or 2 votes. When Linda McMahon had to go up and get confirmed, she got confirmed by like close to 70 votes. And Richard Blumenthal, who ran against her twice and knew about these charges, and I noticed she knew about these charges because his camp during the campaign tried to get a hold of me to talk to me about the cover up. So they wanted information on Linda McMahon at that time. But yet, when Linda McMahon came up to run, to get on the Donald Trump's cabinet, Blumenthal voted yes, even though Blumenthal knew he knew everything about this scandal from the past because his people that were running his campaign made sure that they researched everything on Linda McMahon, and they seen that sitting here. So why did Richard Blumenthal, another guy, why did he say yes and confirm her?
We're talking about not only just media site inability to follow up, but now we're talking about political figures and the normal politicking that we see in DC also coming into play with a man who had the power to shut this down, and instead he's one of the votes that get her through. Absolutely disgusting.
Yes,
just horrendous.
And so, and Dave, who did this story, just a few things on him. He's interviewed people like Anthony Valenti, who was an employee for the company. He's interviewed Tony Faga, who was the second lawyer of Tom's. He's going through the Freedom of Information Act, and he's gotten that information on the closed court stuff with the any information of people testifying before the grand jury. He has gathered all the complaint depositions that were done with Tom's lawsuit by asking for them. He pulled a lawsuit filed by Vince against Phil Muchnick, and he has all the depositions done between Phil Muchnick and the depositions done with Vince McMahon's lawyer. So he has all that information. He has more information than anybody's ever had in this. He's pulled out all the information for John Arezzi, who was and Dave Meltzer he's working with, that gives him plenty of information. Dave Meltzer, you can find his name anywhere because he's associated now with, he has the largest newsletter online, wrestling newsletter. He also works with the UFC. So basically you have this man sitting on all this stuff. He's given it to the lawyers at Business Insider. They're sitting on this story right now. And the story is not out there. So are they going to grow a set of balls, or Vince McMahon or somebody got to them? Did Jerry McDivitt get to them already? Is this another story that's just buried about child molestation? They want to, the reason that this came out now and they're nervous is because of all the cases. Like, I'll give you an example. Bill Cosby, all his stuff from 30 years ago, all came out.
Coming out now.
Epstein, Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, all those real creepy people. All this stuff has really come forward and out. So the media right now is doing everything except researching the one where kids get molested, boys. We're
talking about the WWE, a billion-dollar corporation that's all over the world. We're not talking about adults, consenting adults, or even adults who don't consent, which is a very sad thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about children being groomed, predatory, like Chris Hansen type stuff. He's the only one I could think come to mind. But I mean, you're talking about people who are willingly letting kids who just had dreams, who just wanted to be in the WWE and had these snakes in the grass, these predators come up to them and tell them that they will let them be in the WWE. And once they got their hooks in them, they were grooming them. You guys know what that means. You know what the terminology means. They were grooming them with the intentions of irreparably messing them up so much that they would think this is a normal, healthy thing. And they destroyed lives, a family member of mine included. And they've been allowed to skate by. And now why the WWE even gives a shit about this is because of the fact that we're in an era where the Epsteins, the Weinsteins, and everybody else are being brought forward, and they are like, wow, we have so much skeletons in our closet, we'll lose our endorsements and our revenues. And make no mistake, they're not sorry. They don't care. They care that if this comes out, they'll lose those endorsements from the toy companies, from the cereals, from the movie deals, and everybody else that they got their sticky, grubby little hands into. All of the different things that they're a part of will go away if someone has the balls to put the story like this out
let me
there.
give you an example. Billy Graham, who was a famous wrestler, superstar Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, who was one of the greatest wrestlers ever. They both were, well, Bruno and I were friends. I talked to Bruno a lot. And they eventually, Bruno recently passed away a year or two so, now, I believe. But they eventually decided to go back to the WWE because what they wanted to get in the Hall of Fame. So Bruno Sammartino shocked me. I'm not going to knock Bruno Sammartino because Bruno Sammartino was one of those guys that always got in Vince's face. He was a very honorable man. He shouldn't have had to beg to be in the Hall of Fame because Bruno Sammartino was wrestling for many years. Everybody grew up with Bruno. Now, Billy Graham, that's a different story. Billy Graham was not, he was popular, but he wasn't at the level of Bruno Sammartino, and he sold out just to get in the Hall of Fame. See, and eventually what it comes down to, and when they say, I'll give you an example, with me coming out, I read remarks all over, oh, Lee must be looking for money now. No. Yes, there was.
Let me ask you something just so we can clear this up for anyone who will watch this, and I don't have to answer illogical comments in my comment section. Are you getting paid for this? I know I damn sure am not. Just so you guys are clear, I have no stake in this but getting out the truth because I'm
watching what my brother's going through. My brother and my relationship with my brother has been up and down, and anytime it's been down, it's been because of the WWE. My brother and I were very close before the WWE. And then we've had our moments since then. But anytime, like we haven't talked recently, but he told me, he said, Lee, if something happened to me because of this going on in my life, please go forward. Let everybody know what they've done. So, I'm doing this with my brother's blessings. I'm not, this has nothing to do with my brother, Tom. He was a street kid. And after he got destroyed by these people, he went out and became a bodyguard. And and Tom's a weightlifter, martial artist, and he was the bodyguard to billionaires. He straightened out his life, and he's had a wonderful life, wonderful children, and anything he has is because he worked for it, him and his wife. And so here they are working for this stuff, but all this stuff's coming forward now. And the reason, when Michael Jackson's video came out and those boys came forward and they talked about, on HBO about what happened to them with Michael Jackson, that was the moment that I think it started affecting my brother again and really bothered him. Because
this isn't something that just goes away, right? I mean, you see something.
No, of course not. It doesn't go away. Women and men that are abused, it doesn't go away. There's no, even if, and Tom says there was no actual penetration type sexual, but it was a continuous sexual harassment every day.
I mean, well, he had to, that night that you described, I mean, that's traumatic within itself. He's trapped there, doesn't know what's going to happen. Yes. He has to sleep out in a van because he feels like, threatened.
Yeah, and depositions. People can find that stuff through depositions on exactly. And the depositions is part of this story coming out into Insider, Business Insider, and the David Bixpen. Now, David Bixpen is probably never going to talk to me again because I'm talking right now about this story coming out. But I'm at the point now, once you start just totally blowing me off like this, you're not showing me the respect I showed you for 3 years. For 3 years, I was always there for him, and I'm even in this story. I'm a huge part of this story he talks about how they set me up and how they set me up to be arrested and stuff. And he talks about the whole night. I remember.
Maybe that's the WWE right there.
Well,
There's a lawyer contacting you.
I trust David. I don't, but sometimes I wonder because we've been on this for 3 years and it seems like something always comes up. It's like, is David legit, or is he just getting as much information from me so he could pass it back to WWE? So I'm at the point. I don't think that's the case, but nothing will surprise me because I've seen so many powerful people. Tom Brokaw. I've seen reporters after reporters. That's when I've learned that the real reporters are Geraldo Rivera, Curtis Sliwa, guys like that. Those are guys that got the balls. They don't back off from these people. But I've dealt with so many that don't, especially the ones in the wrestling world. Those guys are the worst. They run around and they talk about all this stuff they broke and all this. No, they didn't break crap. They basically followed people's stories and they made stories. And Tom's had horrible attacks from people in the industry like Dave Meltzer saying bad things about him and not even knowing him. He's had a couple conversations and he would come forward. And personally, I can bring up these names. I don't give a shit if anybody wants to sue me because you're going to get exactly from me what anybody else is going to get. Nothing. Maybe I'll give you that plaque on the back wall over there. That's about the only thing you're getting from me. And if I'm told never to talk about this again, I'll never talk about it again. But
and good luck suing me because, there ain't really nothing there. So,
yeah. This is just, we are able, and the reason we're talking now is because we have been given this gift by YouTube when they do not get stupid and censor people because of politics. And YouTube does that all the time. And I'm hoping YouTube doesn't do this because you know what? Linda McMahon works for Donald Trump. So I don't think YouTube's going to shut this down. That's another thing. And I support Donald Trump. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Because all these people, these politicians have horrible people working for them. And
it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah. Now, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, they did the House committee. They got together and Triple H went there. And all I remember is Triple H walking inside the whole entire in the House of Representative. Both of the parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, they all got up and they were all giddy and they were all running to him and saying the nicest things to him. They were literally starstruck by this guy. And that's when I said to myself, I did not realize that Triple H was that well known.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my friend Steve, he's a huge fan of Triple H. I never liked him. I always liked Mick Foley, but that's a conversation.
Well, Triple H, he married right.
Yeah, and just to keep in mind, Triple H is leading things now, but make no mistake, behind the scenes, at the head and at the top and on Mount Olympus, as it's always been, Vince McMahon is still at the top of things, even though Triple H is taking the forefront.
And Linda's right next to him.
And Linda is right next to him. Yes. And these people have got to see that it doesn't matter whether or not you consider yourself a giant or you consider yourself the big boss, right? That when you do things this horrible or when you willingly let things happen, you might not be involved, but you let it go on, knowing what was happening, knowing the lives that were being destroyed. There has to be consequences. If we're in a new year where we're talking about everybody has to be held accountable for not being inclusive and for not doing this and not doing that, and all these women who are being assaulted and stuff, and we're holding people accountable, then these guys have to be held accountable for the multiple lives that they've destroyed. They've got to be held accountable too.
And it's been many, and I've seen my brother suffer through this. So I can imagine that the guys that they called Mrs. Phillips. Can you imagine being a 14, 15-year-old boy and you got the wrestlers in the locker room laughing and calling this poor kid Mrs. Phillips, and he doesn't know that they're calling him Mrs. Phillips. You
I
know,
mean, yeah, you got wrestlers, maybe not all of them, but the locker room talks, they know the stuff that happens too,
it's
and
happened to a
they
lot
won't
of men.
say anything.
It happened to uh, Randy Orton's brother, cousin, I believe, cousin,
Oh yeah, Orton's had
uncle.
stuff. You can watch WWE stuff, or you can watch documentaries on certain wrestlers where you could see things that they talk about that happen behind the scenes. I watched a great documentary on CM Punk when he was talking about how things are politicked over there, and how he got shafted on opportunities because he didn't have the look, or he wasn't what they were looking for. There's all sorts of stuff within there. But just besides this, there's also people who don't get advanced, people who get shafted, people who can't move up because they don't have a look, or they don't have the thing that the WWE is looking for, that these business execs decide is what the company needs, or you're not what the brand is. I mean, there's that normal politics on top of all this other heinous stuff that they're covering up on top of that. So it's like multiple layers of bullshit that this company has been keeping down. And the only good thing to come out of this new Me Too movement era, this new garbage that people are putting out, is that stuff like this can finally be brought out. That people who have had family members hurt by these people and tossed aside like garbage can finally have someone come out and say something. And maybe I won't reach millions of people, and maybe I won't be even a blimp in the big grand scheme of things, but there are bigger people who will be. There are people I reached out to, and hopefully if you watch this, you guys will tweet this out, because this is important. People need to know. These are lives that were destroyed. This is one of my own family members who went through this. This hits close to home, and this should be brought out to everyone. And those people who have suffered should have closure. These people need to be held accountable for the things that they've done.
And they bought so many people off. I'll give you an example. One of the guys that was in the lawsuit and testified to Tom when Tom and I got the lawyer, stated everything that happened and did depositions. And the next thing they know is he's riding around in a new car, and this was right after everything was settled. Many people were paid off. I'll give you an example. Vince McMahon's Jim Stewart. He was Vince McMahon's limo driver. He no longer works there, I believe. But people have been trying to talk to him. Can you imagine the things that Jim Stewart knows about Vince McMahon?
Oh gosh.
I mean, his limo driver. And it's like, and there's a rumor, and that this was part of this story coming out too with him. So, there's lots of people that know a lot of stuff. Lots of people that know a lot of stuff. But out of everything, the best thing to do is for any of the people that were boys back then that were involved in this. I spoke to many of you back then when we were doing investigating the case. And I really can't, I'm not going to put nobody's name out there, even though I have your names. So you should come forward and really say, hey, look, this is what happened to me. Look, we're doing it right here. Something so simple as doing it on YouTube. It doesn't take much to start your own channel and talk about stuff.
And I would be willing to have them on the channel, or even if they want to do it on their own because they're not comfortable, whatever else. But it's important, and it needs to be said.
Are they if they want to do something, if they're in Canada, they can contact Hannibal or you. There's people to contact, and to talk about this. I remember when I went on to Hannibal, he got a bunch of quotes when I was done. Some people were pretty mean. They said things like, I just want money, or I don't know whether to believe it or not. What do you think that I just going to come here and totally lie, that Business Insider? Let me give you an example. Everything that I said that would be in the Business Insider story has been doubled and triple checked by David Bixenspan. And he even said that. He said, Lee, I doubled and triple checked everything you said. Everything that you said about your record, everything. He looked at everything.
I mean, this is public knowledge. We're not living in an age where people who are following me, people who watch this or view this, you can't look this up. For crying out loud, you could see my dad and my uncle if you put in their names and YouTube videos. And these aren't videos created by them. I'm talking about interviews from Geraldo and stuff. You can see their logos, the official logos from the media outlets, where this was a interview that was conducted back in the 90s by whoever the journalist was. They have the station, they have the reporter right there. This is not stuff that is just like, we're creating it just to make a video. This is legitimate stuff that has been out there for years, and now through YouTube, the videos and the interviews are all there. Anyone can watch it.
Well, look, I just put, whoops, which way do I go here? Okay. I just put online, I just taped in, I put Tom and Lee Cole in the WWF. And the first story that came out was, let's see. The first story that comes out is all the interviews that we did over the years from 19. If you put any of that stuff, or put in Tom Cole, Lee Cole, WWF or WWE, and look at all the stories that pop up. The first thing is an interview that was done by my brother in Connecticut, and where my family all showed up, and Linda McMahon came running down with cameras and started filming my family. That's the first thing. So that's a 3 to 4 minute show where Tom spoke for 4 minutes about his opinion of the WWF. So that's all you got to do.
And the only reason why I haven't streamed any of this, and I'm leaving it for you guys to look this up, is because there is copyright issues. If I stream something that's from another company, I can get a copyright claim, or I can have the video struck, and I don't want that to happen. I want this to be up, and I want everybody who's watching this to share with everybody else and let them know that this video is out, so that they can get this information and they can look it up, and then we can get more people to be involved in this, because this is important stuff that needs to be out there. And the only way it gets out there is if everyone watching, or anyone who will watch, shares this information. So I'm going to kind of start to wrap things up here, because
before you do that, I want to play this.
Okay. I mean, you could just share it on the screen.
The next 3 years, he says
he was
sexually abused by his supervisor, Mel Phillips, who Cole says has a foot fetish. And Cole says there were other abusers besides Phillips.
I was grabbed on numerous occasions in my testicles and my buttocks by Pat Patterson of the World Wrestling Federation, and Terry Garvin propositioned me when I was 16, offered me cocaine and all kinds of drugs to have sex with him. When I refused, I was let go from the company when I was 16, and then I returned again when I was 19. I was let go again because I refused Terry Garvin's advances.
So Cole hired a lawyer and ended up with a $55,000 settlement to cover lost wages. As for Mel Phillips, he was fired from the company. But Cole's family says firing Phillips wasn't enough, and they were at the Stanford headquarters today demanding justice.
I would like to see Mel Phillips put behind bars where the hell he belongs. Because he's a child molester, the man. It's enough for him just to step down from his job. He's walking the streets, he's molested children. The man should be put in jail.
World Wrestling Federation President Linda McMahon says an outside investigator concluded there was no evidence of Phillips molesting employees, but the company fired him anyway.
First, he was put on suspension pending investigation. The investigation was taking so long, there was so much negative happening with it, that we finally told Mel that it was better for him and better for our company for him to go on in a different way.
McMahon doesn't deny Phillips had a foot fetish, but she said it had become a joke and was blown out of proportion.
You call a man filming your feet for hours at a time and playing with your feet and making you cry when you're only 13 years old and recording it for his own sexual purposes. If she calls that normal, then obviously there's something wrong with her also.
McMahon says she took a personal interest in Cole and tried to send him to counseling, encouraged him to get his high school equivalency, and finally offered to put him through Westchester Community College with a promise to come back and work for the company if he passed all his courses. She says she was greatly disappointed when he did none of the above.
We took an opportunity to help a young man who, for whatever reason, seemed confused, he seemed troubled, and wanted to have an opportunity in life, and we felt that we could help him.
Cole says McMahon's efforts were not out of personal interest, but for personal gain. That's an issue the courts will have to decide. In Stamford, Allison King, News 12.
So, did you hear her say, for whatever reason?
You came in there, you look pretty tense
months right now, looking at jail. Is he the perfect opponent for you?
So did you hear her say that for whatever reason he seemed confused and lost?
Yeah, it's the normal sidestep we hear from anybody who's, in the entertainment industry. It's they were confused, or, we tried to do this, this, and this, and the person refused our efforts, and all of the same garbage that all of these people who are in the entertainment industry go to.
And
It's nothing we haven't seen before.
Linda McMahon also said we wanted to help him get his high school diploma, and we sent him to college. So he never got his high school diploma, and you sent him to college. So they knew he was going to fail. That was why they sent him to school, and that was the whole. And you heard Tom talking in that, and Tom does not come off as a liar. And he basically said, it's like Tom says. He says if she knew that Mel had a foot fetish and they all laughed about it, or they let him work there must be something wrong with her.
I mean,
Right
yeah,
there.
I mean, the evidence is right there because she's saying in her own words that they knew about it, but they made a joke about it. And how can you joke about something like that? Yeah, that's demented. That is crazy. That's the kind of stuff you hear, okay, like with the Winehouses and stuff. They're like, oh, yeah, we knew about the couch, but we all had a laugh. It's the same exact model that all of these people follow. They all say it was a joke and then it got out of hand. Who's it a joke to? What about to the people it's happening to? Is that funny to them? Because I bet you it's not funny. I bet you it's terrifying when a grown man's going up to a young child and like fascinated with their feet and wanting to give them foot massages. I mean, that just sounds, when you say it out loud, that sounds really, really disgusting.
That sounds
weird.
more disgusting than actually having it happen, for the simple fact that you have a grown man grabbing your feet and massaging your feet and your foot.
I mean, we're not talking about adults. We're talking, I mean, full-grown adult would find that weird. But I mean, we're talking about children who idolize these people in power. And then you have someone who literally holds their job that you're working at in their hands telling you, hey, you want to stay around, then this is how it goes. This is just normal. This is just the company norm. No, it's not. That's not normal by societal standards, and it sure as hell shouldn't be normal in a place of business. This is a place of business. If you are not allowed to fraternize with other people or coworkers in most businesses, then adults fraternizing with kids, that's on a whole separate level.
Well, look at the owner. The owner got arrested 2 years ago for going into a massage parlor and harassing the woman, Vince McMahon, remember? 2 years ago,
Yeah.
he was arrested.
Yeah, I remember that. That was, I mean, so what we're saying is you don't have to believe if any of this stuff is true, but you can even track the pattern of this behavior based on stories already come out that are already factual stories on this company. And you can see that there is a pattern of misconduct, of steroid and drug abuse, of sexual harassment. It all tracks. It all lines up. It's nothing fake or fictional. There are stuff still out there. It's the reason why WWE almost lost everything to WCW in the 90s. Everyone thinks it's the Monday Night Wars. Why do you think they lost all those wrestlers? Because they thought that the ship was sinking, and they went to the other company because they knew all this stuff was coming out. I mean, this stuff ties into why
the people that ran the WCW in the 90s got a hold of me even a couple times because they wanted.
They knew. Everybody knew, and they thought
in the later 90s. This was like 96, 97 when all this started to happen. Everybody knows what went on. Everybody, and that's pretty. I guess that's pretty much what we could talk about now. We have more stuff to talk about on this, but maybe we should just give it a couple weeks or a month and talk about make a part 3 of this, of so much more stuff, because there's a lot of stuff we're still sitting on that we have not put out.
Yeah, I like to keep this to about an hour, hour and a half. Let people soak this up and know that I am not done yet. We will start releasing more of these and giving you guys even more information. But it's a lot to take in, a lot for people to absorb. But people, go on YouTube. Go on YouTube. Look up my uncle's name, Tom Cole. Look up my father's name, Lee Cole. You will find the videos, and you can see for yourself. These are legitimate interviews, legitimate news sources. And this isn't 2020 news. This is when news used to report the facts. We're talking the 90s here. And you can even go back to earlier, right, with all of the other wrestlers and stuff, and look at these things that have been happening for almost a decade now. And you can track it.
Mel Phillips ran around, started in the 70s with the kids into the 80s.
I mean, God, that's even before me. That's way before me.
Mel Phillips started way back then. And Mel Phillips was with the company. Did you know that Mel Phillips got fired? Vince McMahon went to Mel Phillips and told him that it was getting out of control with the boys and that they were going to let him go. And then about a month later, they rehired Mel back. So here's what I want to ask you. What did Mel say to them that made him hire him back? Sounds like Mel knew something and they hired him back. That's what it comes to.
You know, we're going to let you guys sit on this. If you have any questions, go ahead. Feel free to leave them in the comments below. You can follow me on Twitter. I am General Zod. FZ for Fandom Zone.
Please subscribe. You're going to hear a lot more stuff. Please subscribe to this site right here, and
more to come.
Other stuff.
So, anyways, before we go, I'm not going to even promo the rest of the stuff I got going. I'll have it on my Twitter. I just want you guys to think about this because this is a serious thing, and I want you guys to take this all in and realize that we're not done. There's more to this story. I will be releasing it in the upcoming weeks and months and kind of letting this out. And Business Insider, if you're out there, if you get a hold of this, step up and do the right thing, because whether or not you guys release it, I damn sure will make sure that I will use my platform and every social media that I'm on to get this out there, because this is not just, this is my family. This is multiple families that are personally involved in this. And if you won't do the right thing, then somebody has to step up and do the right thing.
And I like to tell David Bixpan that I've been working with you for 3 years on this story. And if you take this the wrong way of me coming out today, I'm sorry, but you kind of been blowing me off lately and not giving me direct answers. So I just feel like something's not right. And that's pretty much it.
And it's gotta get out there. That's just the thing. It's gotta get out there. It can't be a story that everybody sits on for years to come. And I don't care if I'm a small channel or not. I still got people and people that got people and people who will share this and hopefully keep on sharing it until we reach large people and let them know, because this needs to be said. This needs to be out here. And media, if you get a hold of this, you need to do the right thing and you need to release this stuff, because all of you are sitting on the exact same information that we have. And it's sad that two guys who are just here on the YouTube are breaking this before you guys, who are the top critics, even say anything about this. You should be ashamed of yourself. All the media and the press should be ashamed of themselves. And I am done. I've got to go because I'm so pissed right now. I might actually, like, the vein in my neck might start popping up. So thank you, everybody who is watching. You're all beautiful, wonderful people. Like, share. Very important. Share this with everyone you know on every platform across every media you can. And also leave me comments.
We'll see you next Saturday night at 10 Central with our next news story.
See you guys later.